Welcome to SBI's GTM Value Creation Corner podcast, with SBI Growth Advisory Managing Partner Tony Erickson hosting. In this episode, Tony talks with Nicole Rogas, President of RevSpring, to explore how today's leaders can hit the ground running, embrace AI, and lead with accountability. Tony and Nicole reveal how leaders harness AI, drive growth with leaner teams, and stay ahead while proving relationships remain the ultimate advantage.
Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast. Today on the podcast, we will be joined by Nicole Rogas, President of RevSpring. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's dive in. Stepping into today's go-to-market leadership positions is interesting, Nicole, because, in the past, we used to talk about how the average tenure of a commercial leader is 18 to 24 months. And, that was measured in quarters. Now it's measured in weeks, and people expect stuff to happen at a ridiculously fast pace. And when we think about ridiculously fast pace, it's hard to not think about AI. And, 5 years ago, we didn't have the term AI, but we were doing a lot of things that were AI. And now we're rebranding a lot of those RPAs and other tech-enabled solutions under this AI umbrella, and also creating all kinds of additional AI capabilities that are really taking it to the next level. So in this episode, we're going to explore how you're stepping into your new role at RevSpring and taking a different lens. And frankly, you're accelerating the pace of, a commercial leader moving into an organization. So that's where we're going to start. So the first thing I want to ask you is, with that being the backdrop and the expectation, I think it's been quite some time since you stepped into a commercial role like this. How has it changed?
It's a great question. And I think at every organization, it is a little bit different. But when you've done it a few different times, you kind of know exactly what you're looking for. But you just have to learn to understand the different dynamics of the company you've joined. And, I think the use right now is you have to trust your instincts too. So I think in any role you serve, having a commercial lens, paying attention to growth and being growth oriented is no longer like, oh, a nice to have. It's a must have in your leadership teams, because of the pressures of being able to grow your business, grow it quickly, and to grow it in a sustainable way. And so that means every single person on the executive team now is commercially oriented, even if they don't want to be. So I would say that first. Coming to RevSpring, understanding that I'd spent quite a bit of my career in revenue cycle previously, I sort of understood the products and the problems we solved very quickly. What I had to do very fast was learn the people, the culture, and look at what had driven this business's incredible success up into this point. And I can look through the data, see some trends, see that where certain types of go-to-market, like indirect versus direct. My business today has a lot of channel partners and reseller relationships. And so we look at the trends of how those partners have been performing historically year on year, or how the direct teams have been performing in the hospital market versus ambulatory. And you can spot a trend. It's not just looking at last year's data, it's looking at how that data actually is changing quarter over quarter. And you can spot very quickly where you need to repivot and focus. And so I spent maybe 1 month, 30 days getting my head in the business and seeing the trends and looking at the data before I started making moves, where historically you're told to kind of sit back for 6 months and listen. If I had waited 6 months, I probably wouldn't be here in 6 more. So it's just important.
So that's actually an interesting point because, you and I have been around enough commercial leaders coming into the role. CROs, CSOs, CGOs, COOs, presidents, pick your title. At the end of the day, historically, they've always come in and done a listening tour, done their world tour, gone out and visited everyone. That usually buys between 1 and 2 quarters, 3 to 6 months before you even have to formulate an opinion. But that's a little different now. So,
Completely.
the pace at which you've got to listen is no longer what it once was.
Week 3 or week 4, I was in my first board meeting and I presented.
Nice. I remember when I moved into a growth role not too, this is probably about 10 years ago. And I remember going I'm in onboarding and I literally come out of the onboarding class and I'm talking to my boss who says, well, you're already behind. And I'm like, I literally just stepped out of onboarding and was handed my computer. How can I be behind? It's just the way it works. I'm like, well, okay, at least we know, we understand the expectations. And I mean, heck, that was 10 years ago. It's only gotten worse. I mean, the instant gratification expected out of a commercial leader now is intense.
Yeah, and I think it's some of it too should cause people to contemplate decisions that they make too, right, Tony? I mean, it's a sense of accountability from the day you step in the role. And if you don't feel that it doesn't matter what was done before you or decisions that were made that are going to be impactful for the next year. And even if you changed it now, you might not see the impact for 6 months. And you're accountable day one. And I would encourage anybody who steps into any kind of senior role to feel that as well. Because if you don't and you become sort of victim to decisions that were made before you, you're going to be in a lot of trouble a few months out of the gate. So just wear the accountability and be the coach day one. Day one.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because I would even say it's before you step in the role. It's when you accept the role. And I was talking with someone who was contemplating a change, and I was laughing to myself because the talk track went something like this. Yeah, I'm going to get something lined up, and then I'm probably going to take a month off and then go step into the role. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. Once they decide they want you there, it's the "what have you done for me lately" mentality. Like, if you want time, take the time before you do the search.
I lived it myself in the last in the last 12 months, and I thought it was time for me to take a minute. Everybody deserves that, right? And I think you should take it at one point or another in your career. And I intended for that minute to be like 6 months. And I just in my overly ambitious ways, just made a few phone calls, and next thing I knew, my intention of 6 months off suddenly turned into 2 months, and I was back at it. And I'm grateful that I made the decision. But yes, you're exactly right. When you are charged with growth as your main initiative, it is the day you make the verbal commitment that it becomes your responsibility. So.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, so let's change gears here. So AI is frankly redefining go to market right now. And we talked about you coming in, you got your playbook, but that's changed. So how has AI reshaped Nicole's playbook coming into a new role compared to what Nicole would have done 10 years ago going into a new role?
Yeah, no, it's great. So I love using ChatGPT or pick your platform, pick any platform you want, to help accelerate what you know. So we all have a playbook of what works for us as leaders or what we've learned from our failures and our successes in our past. And now I'm utilizing and I'm able to have my team utilize the use of technology and AI to actually automate the work that might have taken us several weeks or months to do can take just a couple of days and actually get yourself really grounded, sometimes in just an hour of spending the time to feed the AI what it needs to have a baseline set of data. And so, for example, something I always do immediately if I just put my sales leader hat on, looking at sales stages. I'm an absolute stickler about using sales stages and forecasting stages. And so if you do that right and you set your stages appropriately, you can predict and know from historicals how much time it takes for a deal to move between stages. You can look at your data and determine, where do my deals get stuck most frequently at a certain stage? And is it often in a certain segment of is it, for me in healthcare, is it hospital? Is it ambulatory? Is it payer? Is it indirect partners? Where do my deals get stuck by product, by segment, by stage? And then how are my win rates different based on that? And so it takes a few sales operations folks, an analyst or two, someone really great with Excel. They could dump it all in a file. They do this analysis. They see if it feels good. They present it to me. I spot something that only I know because I know my stuff. They go back. And that cycle takes a month by the time you really get through it. Now, I can take the last 2 years data from Salesforce or whatever tools you're using. There's plenty of them out there. Feed it and very quickly know where I have a problem. And then we can turn all of our attention to solving that problem. And so that's just one example is I know what I want. And now I can use the data of this incredible business, feed it to something to actually tell me what would have taken me a lot longer. So it's not going to replace the need for experience or for a commercial operations function at all, but it will just help you move quicker and more efficiently through your projects.
Yeah, I think the thing is that what we're seeing is it identifies the problem faster, but it can't fix it. I mean, that's still where human intuition comes in. I mean, if you're getting stuck in stage 4, stage 5, whatever your stages are, it can't get you unstuck on that, but it can get you to that, hey, stage 4 in our life cycle is we do a product demo and we realize when we don't do a product demo, like we should have never exited stage 4, being a stickler for the stages if that's your business model. And it gets to the answer, but it still can't institute a mandate and make sure that it gets adhered to by the people consistently. And, but I think some of the interesting stuff that we're starting to see. So, within our platform, we've built an LLM and trained it with our 2 decades of experience. And we found an interesting use case the other day where we are going into call recording transcripts to determine where discounting is happening from a rep when they're in a conversation, and you're listening for the keywords. And is it the client asking for the discount or is it the rep proactively doing it too early in the sales cycle? And that's another great example where you can take, the LLM and you can actually feed transcript data along with all the other data, and you can pinpoint very specific problems down to individuals where there's coaching opportunities. And no spreadsheet would ever have identified that problem.
No, I love that. And how do you, Tony, I think phone recording or, that's been out there for a while, but do sales leaders, sales managers have the capacity to listen to all of these calls and figure out what each of their reps need to turn around and be able to enable them? So to your point about you still need the people. No, they don't. And so now if your software or AI in general has that ability to sort of do the listening and spot you to look at the right place, you can actually then customize your training schedule for that sales rep.
Hmm.
It, it helps with sales enablement and sales training in general, because one thing I've learned is having a one size fits all like sales certification program isn't going to get it done, or a commercial certification program, because every person or segment needs something a little bit different. And so if we can use technology like that to help guide us into having a more meaningful training experience, we actually solve the problems quicker too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So next thing I want to dive into is the concept of return on go to market. So, numerous conversations over the last couple of months because we're getting into board season and we're getting into 2026 planning for anyone on a calendar fiscal. As the leaves start to change colors, so does our go to market model for 2026. And two words I'm hearing consistently: the board expects more efficiency and more productivity. So, how are you driving the return on your go to market investment? Because if there's anything that is a pattern right now, they are expecting you to do more with less going into 2026.
Yes, they are. And actually, one of the things we're looking at right now is a sales effectiveness ratio, where we'll use sort of their um, total compensation against their bookings, against sort of future projections, and we can come up with a score to sort of score score the rep, and it's something that's newer and we're going to start adopting. But the
Interesting. You're
return,
giving them like a FICO score for the rep themselves.
kind of, yeah.
You've got a
Um,
600 FICO. I'm going to need a bigger hitter on this one.
well, and the silly part of it is it's sort of ridiculous when you step back and think about like how can you do that? But it's really just meant to be directional in identifying what does great really look like when you go to hire or when you bring on a sales rep, right? So it helps you determine earlier. So for your ROI comment, I can earlier figure out what is the ideal profile of a person we want to bring in to this company to sell, and what does great look like, and do they have those traits, so we can use the scoring. The other thing is around ROI. Starting right now, believe it or not, September, it is absolutely annual planning season underway. How do we predict the markets where we're going to grow, where the ideal market profile, if you will? So if I create a real example, with all the regulatory changes and the big beautiful bill and other things, where is patient affordability going to be the biggest issue for consumers, for patients, for people in the market? And when you think about, is it the rural communities? And so they're going to struggle more. And so how do we pivot now in how we engage in that segment, knowing that into 2026, those providers are going to need companies like mine? So using data, using market intelligence that we're getting fed into us, how do we then move quicker to double and triple down on the areas I know that we bring value to our clients in a time they need it the most, while also meeting our growth expectations that have been set for us? So just segmentation of the market and where to spend your few dollars to have the biggest impact.
Yeah. It's a fascinating concept because pulling in macroeconomic trends, like people are still, most companies are using AI to do better writing of emails, more contextual outreach, but the great ones are going to actually start using it for external search, pulling in external information, in an industry like yours, digging into bills and understanding where funding has been approved and really getting granular about where we can go next. Because that's the thing when you talk about return on go to market. Backwards looking is almost a fallacy because, things are changing so fast right now. And if you don't know where the next beautiful bill is going to put money and go get after it, your competitors will. And so when we think about the next 2 to 3 months, like that's where all the focus is going to go as we enter annual planning season. But I want to take us one more place before we wrap up. Instead of 2 to 3 months, let's look out 2 to 3 years. So what is Nicole Rogas's prediction of what the commercial organization of the future is going to look like 3 years from September 3rd, 2025? With AI built in? Are you going to be managing agentic salespeople that are bots, or like what's the prediction going to look like?
What do I win if I get this right, Tony, in 3 years?
If you get this right, I will come to Chicago. We will go to one of the football games of your choice, Bears or Pee Wee League, your pick, anywhere in between. And then we're going to go out to a wonderful dinner at one of my favorite Gene and Georgetti's. Is it still there?
Oh,
I love that
that's a
place.
great, yeah, it's a great place. It is a great place. It's so funny because I'm not going to say anything that's earth shattering here. I'm going to say something very big. I'm going to say something that's very basic. You cannot replace relationships. You cannot replace relationships. Not even a little bit. And in the industry that I have incredible passion for and that I will spend my whole career in, 2, 3 years in now, still a way to go, is in healthcare. We're all just 1 degree apart from one another. And you often don't come in and see folks leave. And so what I would say is we may not have growing organizations as far as our labor is concerned. We might see companies scale with the same, being not something we all look at as a challenge, because it still is. Everyone's like, oh, you want me to grow double digits, but not in any human capital? Like, how can that work? I think you're going to see less pushback because you're going to have more folks adopting the use of tools and technology and AI to help them be more efficient. And you're going to have folks who have seen it work over the last couple of years. There's going to be a great couple of winners and use cases that say, I was able to grow and I was able to grow my EBITDA because I didn't have to add more cost to the system by doing so. But you're never going to replace the people. So there won't be, I don't believe that these agentic AI world of non-people selling to you. In certain industries, you might be able to do more that way, where it's more transactional selling. But in the world where you're selling complicated software where you're going to make an impact, you're just going to see growth with the same, and it's going to be normal. That's just going to be normal.
So, I love that. And I'm going to build on it just a tad because in the future, I agree with you. Relationships will be the single most valuable form of currency because you cannot outsource, you cannot delegate, you cannot automate, even with AI, intimacy. You can't
Mm-mm.
do that. And that's where relationships will continue to be there. But I also love your second point around growth without addition. We're going to see that too. The better alignment that AI will bring across sales, marketing, our support, our customer success, all those orgs will allow us to not have to grow those things the way we once used to because we had all kinds of duplication of effort. I think will be a much tighter relationship even within the commercial org itself. And that will allow us to do it without sprawl, if you will.
Yeah. And you'll see some companies that aren't adopting it right now that will get left behind because of
Yeah.
it. So,
Well, Nicole, thank you as always. I look forward to revisiting this in September of 2027 over a steak dinner at Gina Giorgetti's when we realize that you were right. Relationships are always going to matter, and being more efficient with the resources that you've got will always be the key to success.
well, I look forward to it too. And feel free to come out before then. We can always go at mistakes. So,
Well, that's true. We could always do that too. But we don't have to wait until then. But we've got that on the books. It's recorded. It's officially on the internet. So it'll be there forever. And everyone will be able to say whether we were right or wrong and know it and comment on this post on the prediction of the future.
absolutely. Well, thank you. And thanks for having me today, Tony. It's always a blast talking to you and the SBI team. So I appreciate the invite.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to SBI's GTM Value Creation Corner podcast with managing partner Tony Erickson hosting. Visit sbigrowth.com to read SBI's latest research, join upcoming events, or learn about SBI's GTM services. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and connect with us on LinkedIn.